Well, as Venezuela stands at a crossroads with the country's former leader behind bars and the debate grows over who will lead the country into its future, Venezuelans here in Chicago are weighing in on exactly what's next. Ana Gil Garcia with the Illinois Venezuelan Alliance is joining us now to explain. It's always so great to see you and to get your insight on all of this, Ana. I hope you're well.
Oh, thank you, Lourdes, for inviting me. I think in 1 week, we've been already 1 week, since the removal of Maduro. And I believe that we are still in this process of, is this real? This is something that really happened. We waited for 27 years to have Maduro and the regime, the entire regime, to be removed. There was too many crimes committed, and so against humanity and the destruction of the country. Here in Chicago, we are very concerned with the population that we have, the migrant population that we have, because we don't see any solutions in the immediately in terms of protecting the population.
I want to talk about that. I want to just take a second and backtrack a little bit, because as we know, here in Chicago over the last few years, we've had thousands and thousands of Venezuelans come into the U.S. and come into Chicago specifically. Many of them were waiting through their asylum process to go to have a court hearing, right? Or had TPS, so had permission to work. As we look at all of this, because there's so many moving pieces, how are those individuals specifically doing, and kind of what does the process look like for them? Does anything change?
Well, so far, it doesn't seem like anything has changed. We have the second largest number of detainees in detention centers in the United States. They are all waiting for deportation. The problem is, where they're going to be deported. Right. Because, the instability of the country right now is real. So we don't have, the colectivos, for example, which is the paramilitary forces of the Chavismo regime. They are patrolling the street. They're looking for, evidence of who is saying something against Maduro. So, there are many evidence of a very dangerous situation in Venezuela. Now, we have heard, unfortunately, from Homeland Security that the Venezuelans, because of Maduro was removed, they are ready now to go back to the paradise, which is really a very unfair statement to make, because nothing seems to have changed so far.
So they're saying that many of those individuals are ready to go back to Venezuela? Is that what they're...
600,000, they should be ready to go back to Venezuela.
Structurally, nothing much has changed in Venezuela in a week's time, right? Let's talk about where we go from here. Obviously, we know that we've heard President Trump talk about running Venezuela for the time being. How is that being perceived, and what's been the reaction from somebody like you, who has been very much in the know about the government in Venezuela?
Well, one of the things that I have to say is, the majority of the Venezuelans here in the United States, we have still family in Venezuela. So, and we can really, we get information from there every day, and we know that there are more questions than answered right now. We want Venezuela to be led by Venezuelans. If there's something that is going to be done by the United States, that's something that we need to be very careful about. Because we would like to see the return of Edmundo Gonzalez and Maria Corina Machado to be the ones, the leaders of the transition team, for example. And we haven't really seen that this is going to happen soon. So Maria Corina Machado run a great election process, and right now she's our Nobel Peace Prize, and I believe that she's extremely qualified to be the one, leading with Edmundo Gonzalez, the president of the country. And that's what we're hoping. We're hoping for, more inclusion in this U.S. transition team. of Venezuelans, that could really advise the country in terms of, the oil production, the oil management, the health system. So we really have expertise out there, and I'm hoping that, we can see that in the near future.
Has there been anything that you've seen or any indication that leads you to believe that Maria Corina Machado and, of course, her representatives and her group will in some way be able to take over the country of Venezuela? I mean, they won an election a year ago. Do you see any movement in that direction?
Well, one of the things that we are very worried about is that it's being said that it's going to be another election process. We don't want another election process. We went to vote. We voted, a year ago. We have already a president and we have already a vice president. I mean, that really is not in anybody's mind right now. But for sure, we are waiting for the respect of more decisions internally in the country, because right now, believe me, I mean, for us, not many things have changed. The regime is in control. The regime is making decisions right now. And when you have still, the main players of this regime, so it seems, it really feels like, I don't know if this is really happening, but we are hopeful and grateful, just at least to have Maduro being removed and being incarcerated.
And I just want to explain to folks, for people that maybe are not following it, every day. So Maduro obviously was moved out of the country and faced a court hearing here in the United States. But then the person who was put in place was his second in command, Rodriguez, the vice president now, is sort of leading the country for the time being. There's been really no explanation as to how long will that go on, where we go from here. And so one of the things that you're saying is like, look, we need more Venezuelan representation to make some of these decisions, meaning Venezuelans who are living here in America or Venezuelans living in that country. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We don't trust really Delcy Rodriguez. I mean, Delcy Rodriguez was the architect of the cruelty and tortures and, the destruction of the country. Why? There is no reason for us to believe that, that she's going to be doing the job that is supposed to be doing the opposition, Gonzalez and Maria Corina. So that's really what we don't trust right now, how the process is being taking place.
Yeah, like you said, many, many questions still to be answered, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again in the coming weeks and the coming months. In the meantime, we wish you the best of luck. Ana Gil Garcia.